Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the car guru. I was you yesterday. I was you, a consumer. I was trying to buy a car. It wasn't for me. It was for a friend, a neighbor, my dentist, as a matter of fact. And so I said, Craig, let me do the shopping for you. Since you don't want to buy my particular brand of vehicles, either a Ford or a Nissan, he wanted a Lincoln. I used to be a Lincoln dealer. I'm not anymore. I was selling about, I was really killing it, selling about 20 Lincolns a year. And they wanted me to build them a new showroom. And I said, no, thank you. So I asked them what would they pay me for my Lincoln franchise, and they came up with a number. They were in the process of buying out a lot of dealers at the time because pretty much they're required to. If you don't want to be a dealer anymore, they'll buy you out. And sometimes they have special programs. Ford did. As you know, Ford owns Lincoln. And Ford said, we got too many Lincoln dealers, and we want the Lincoln dealers to be special, meaning they want the dealers to focus on the Lincoln brand and not their Ford franchise, which is housed in the same building. They wanted their Lincoln customers to have special privileges. They wanted us to pick up all of their vehicles at their house and bring them in and service them and then take them back. They wanted them washed spotlessly, when they came in for an oil change or whatever they came in for. What else did they want? They had all kinds of crazy requirements. And if you didn't do all the little things that they wanted you to do to make those Lincoln people feel special, they're so special, then they were going to withhold funds. We have this little thing called holdback. It's typically, traditionally it was 3% of the base MSRP minus freight. So it was a number, and it was a pretty significant number, so that if a dealer sold a vehicle for what is referred to as the factory invoice, I know it's a weird name, but that's what we originally pay for the car, then within a certain period of time, sometimes now it's immediately, but in many years ago, it was like 90 days later, you get a check in the mail, or you get the money transferred into your bank account, which was about 3%. So that allowed us to sell vehicles at what we originally paid for a car and still make a little bit of money. I mean, it wasn't much, but it wouldn't sustain you if that's what you had to sell all of your cars for. But, it's better than a stick in the eye, so that's what they did. Well, Lincoln decided to start reducing that. They cut it down to 1%, and you can earn back up to another 1.5% if you would follow their guidelines and meet their standards. And we just thought their standards were outrageous. So that's why we decided to let somebody else be a Lincoln dealer. So I've got this customer of mine, my next door neighbor, my dentist, and he wants a Lincoln Nautilus. And he found one. He found it at a dealership in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I said, let me handle it. I'll be happy to do that for you because he's a busy man. And so I called the dealership. I looked up their number on my computer. I Googled it, and I looked up their number. I called the number. Lady answered the phone. I said, yes, I need to speak to a Lincoln sales manager. Hold, please. Yeah, that was pretty much it. And so I was on hold, and it was pretty pleasant music, but, I'd rather listen to something else. Finally, I hear the phone ringing again. The music stops, and the phone starts ringing again. And it's that same lady answered the phone. And she said, ABC Lincoln. And I said, well, it's not ABC. I'm hiding the dealer's actual name. She said, ABC Lincoln. And I said, yes, I've been on hold waiting for a sales manager. Oh, he's probably busy. Let me try him again. So on hold again. There's the music. And then I hear a voice. I think it's a human, but no, it's his voicemail. So I just hung up. Then I called back. ABC Lincoln. And I said, yes, I just called a few minutes ago, and you put me into voicemail. I really didn't want to get voicemail for a manager because I don't have a lot of success with that. Could I speak to a salesperson? Hold, please. So here I go again. And I was on hold, and I was holding. It rings again. It's her. ABC Lincoln. And I said, Do you not have any salespeople that are available? What, nobody picked up? No, nobody picked up. Well, let me try another one. And then I was on hold again. And then somebody it was a voicemail again, somebody in their business development center said, "Thank you for calling ABC Lincoln. All of our attendants are busy right now, but we'll call you right back." And I wasn't going to leave a message again, so I hung up again. So I just gave up that day. Next morning, I called back again. "ABC Lincoln." And I said, "Okay, I need to speak with," and I even went on their website and found the name of the general manager. I said, "I need to speak with this person." She said, "Hold, please." There we go again. Got his voicemail. This time I did leave a message. I said, "Sir, I don't know you. My name's Lenny Lawson. I'm a Ford dealer in Greenville, Tennessee. And this is my third attempt to try to talk to somebody about a particular vehicle you have in stock that I can help you sell. The guy does have a trade-in. I'm willing to buy the trade-in. So if you don't mind, please call me back, 423-552-2020. This was at, I think it was 3 o'clock yesterday. I got no phone calls that afternoon. They're really hurting to sell cars. You can tell, can't you? And but this morning, I'm going down the road and I see an 865 area code show up on my phone. I'm getting ready to have my hips redone, and so I figured it might be the doctor's office. Nope, it's some salesperson from ABC Lincoln. And he said, "Is this Mr. Lawson?" And I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Well, my manager said for me to give you a call." Now, wouldn't you think that the manager would give me a call instead of passing off to some salesperson? Now, this salesperson was nice, and I said, "Well, I'm looking at this particular vehicle, but I've already called another dealer up in Abingdon who is also a Lincoln dealer, and they have the same exact vehicle in stock." And, just so nobody called me back, and I had to call a bunch of times. You might want to pass that on to your manager, is the fact that I was having a hard time getting through to anybody. You know what he said? He said, "Well, sounds like you've already taken care of this. Anything else, sir?" I said, "No, not really." "Okay, see ya." And it was over. No apology. No attempt to try to get my business back. Nothing. So, folks, is this what it's like? Is this what it is like trying to buy a vehicle when you try to do it by phone or online? If you try to call into a place, I found people don't want to talk anymore. They just want to text. It's a lot easier. You don't have to deal with the emotions and, voice inflection and, all that humanity stuff. Kind of gets in the way. But it doesn't have to be that way. I think a lot of dealerships have lost, I think, businesses in general have lost, that human gift, right? Just being able to interact with other people and make them feel comfortable and be nice and not be hurried and always looking at your cell phone and all that kind of stuff. It is frustrating. The day before yesterday, I was in another dealership. I just went to visit, and I'll tell you about that here in just a second. Okay, I am back. Sometimes I'd like to go, when I go to Johnson City or Knoxville, sometimes I'll just drive around. If my wife wants to go shopping or something like that, then she can go do that. I'll drop her off at a store, to the mall, whatever, and then I'll go drive around dealerships. I know, I'm weird. And so I go in, and sometimes I just like to look at cars, and sometimes I just like to see if anybody's going to respond to me. And I am more often disappointed than not at the lack of professionalism that's in a lot of new car dealerships. I understand what you're going through. There is some value to being acknowledged and have somebody come up to you and say, "Can I help you?" That's not what they're supposed to say, but that's what a lot of them do say. "Is anybody helping you? What's up?" You'll get all kinds of different greetings these days. You never know what you're going to get. I went into a dealership in Johnson City. I won't say where. And I walked in the front door, and immediately there's a nice person walking up to me. Says, "Sir, what can I do for you today?" And I said, "Well, nothing. I'm just kind of looking around. I want to look at Corvettes." He said, "Well, we have quite a few Corvettes. If you need anything, do you want to look by yourself or do you want me to come along?" I said, "No, I'll just look by myself. Thank you, though." And so he said, well, just call me if you need me. I'll be over here in this aisle. It was pleasant. And I walked around, looked at the Corvettes, felt very comfortable. And then I went over and introduced myself to the man that was at the sales tower, which is kind of like, that's the manager, in a car dealership. And I walked up to him. He said, yes, sir, how can I help you? And I said, well, I'm Lenny Lawson. I'm a Ford dealer in Greenville, Tennessee. Oh, he said, I know you. And so we had the best conversation, and everything was wonderful. We talked about some of the challenges in the car business and inventory-wise and tariffs and all that stuff. And we were just, sharing our perspectives, I guess, on the car business. And that's funny how that works, is when you find some kind of a common ground with people. And that's one of the things I really encourage my salespeople to do is, when you interact with a customer, you don't have a whole lot of time to be able to, develop any kind of relationship. All you can do is show interest. And I just feel that that's lacking in a lot of places. It's not lacking at Chick-fil-A. When I drive around there and go through their drive-thru, which I do a lot, you feel welcomed for sure. And it's always their pleasure. I bet they get tired of saying, oh, it's my pleasure. They get tired of saying that, but that's the mantra, isn't it, at Chick-fil-A? Same thing at Powell's, the drive-thru that we have up here in East Tennessee. Excellent customer service. Beautiful grass, and the buildings are painted perfectly. They're weird looking, but they're just immaculate. That's something that consumers, you can appreciate something like that and not even be aware of the fact that you appreciate it. It's just like going to a business and the bathrooms smell really nice and clean. And I think it's a subliminal message that, if our bathrooms are clean, then our hands are probably clean. That's preparing your food. And like in a car dealership, if the people are really nice and they really know how to handle themselves and they're dressed decent and their cars are clean out there on the lot and you don't see a lot of cigarette butts, and when you call in, they answer the phone and you don't get bounced all over the place, just makes you feel good. Makes you feel good about doing business with them. It kind of gives you an indication of what it's going to be like when you buy a car from them and they bring it back in for service. Okay, so today, I finally get to the main point. Are you ready? The name of this show is Don't Ever Buy a Maserati. How's that for a name of a show? Do you know what a Maserati is? And most of you would say, well, I'd never buy one of them anyway. Well, you probably shouldn't. There's a lot of cars that I think people shouldn't buy. And this may sound self-serving to a certain degree because I am a Ford dealer and I'm a Nissan dealer, and nothing that I sell is on this list. But see if you agree with this. And you may not. I say never buy an EV. Now, I don't say never get an EV. I just say don't buy it. Lease it. You don't want to get stuck with an EV because the depreciation is a mystery. We don't know what's going to... Well, we know what's happening already. They depreciate downward rapidly, okay? They do not hold their value. Why is that, Lenny? It's because of uncertainty. People don't know if the batteries are going to last. They don't know if they're going to be able to find places to charge it. They don't know what the warranties are. They've heard a lot of horror stories about used EVs. So, you just don't buy one because they depreciate too quickly. You lease it if you're going to get one. And thank goodness most of the companies can't get rid of their EVs unless they lease them. You still have those people say, I wouldn't lease anything. Well, you should if you're going to buy something that depreciates rapidly. And sometimes, of course, that will have a large impact on the price, on your monthly lease payment. But still, because, most of a lease payment is depreciation. But these leases are subsidized by the manufacturer because the manufacturer has to get rid of them. So don't ever buy an EV. Don't ever buy a luxury car. There are a few exceptions, but luxury cars, it means a lot to you. It could be an image thing. It could be a comfort thing, just like the way they look. But a Cadillac, even a Lincoln for that matter, Genesis, Mercedes, what's happened to them? I remember Mercedes used to be a pretty big status car. Maybe it still is. I don't know. But man, do they go down in value rapidly? That's another vehicle that you don't buy. You lease it. BMW's the same way. I remember when BMWs just pretty much didn't depreciate. Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, up into the 2000s, you could buy a BMW and flip it in a year and, come out pretty good. Well, you can't now. One of the big reasons for that is if you have to replace a headlight in one of those things, and that's one of those when you turn the steering wheel, the headlights kind of turn with the steering wheel, about $2,500 per side as a minimum. We had one, a 5 Series, it was going to cost over $3,000 to replace the headlight on the left side, and the one on the right side was acting up as well. I guess they call them smart headlights. Seems pretty dumb to me. Rolls-Royce, Bentley, you don't see a lot of those around here, that is. But, there's a vehicle that you better have a pretty good asset portfolio to be able to absorb the way those cars depreciate. Maserati, we got a customer right now that's wanting to trade in a Maserati. It's a Maserati SUV. And they told us what the name was. I'd never heard of it. That's a bad sign. If you go to trade in a Toyota Sequoia, okay, I know what that is. Ford Explorer, yeah, know what that is. Maserati, whatever. Nope, never heard of that. You got a picture? You pull it up in the book, and it's depressing. Here you got a car that sells for almost $100,000, and 4 years later, you can't get an offer over $20,000. That's not good. So we don't buy EVs. We don't buy most luxury cars. We don't buy Camaros. And right now, Corvettes. You go by a Chevy dealership to buy a Corvette, they will break your arm trying to get you in it. They're just not selling. Everybody that wanted one got one. So, now's the time. If you just wait. There were people paying $20,000 and $30,000 over window sticker. I was one of them. I bought one of the earliest Corvettes. I paid $15,000 over sticker for it. Did the museum delivery in Bowling Green, Kentucky. My wife and I went to Nashville, spent the night, had a great time, drove up to Bowling Green, did the museum tour and all that stuff, and then drove off in my new Corvette that I paid $15,000 over window sticker for. Drove it home, had a great time, kept it for, 2 months, stuck it in the showroom, sold it. I was done. And I actually got out on it, actually made money. So you can't do that now. Matter of fact, you can buy a Corvette for probably back of invoice right now because there's so much holdback involved. In any kind of oddball car that comes out, something new and really different looking, that's like a Kia or a Hyundai I don't care if it's from Toyota. There's certain things that come out that manufacturers really take real chances on. And then they come out with these really odd colors, and that is something that you need to stay away from if you're not careful. But, there are some exceptions to the luxury car. If you're going to buy a luxury car, get a Lexus. If you're going to buy a luxury car, get an Acura. Of course, a lot of them aren't as luxurious as they used to be. But I guess the lesson here is before you buy a car, what is the end game? What is the plan? Number one, how long are you going to keep it? Is this a 3-year purchase? Is it a 10-year purchase? Makes a big difference. Because if it's a 10-year purchase, it really doesn't matter if it depreciates. Because you're probably going to wear it out before you have to worry about how much it depreciates. If it's a 3-year purchase and you're financing it and you're not putting any money down and you're financing it for 84 months, you probably aren't going to be able to trade in 3 years. It's going to be a bad situation for you. But look it up. What's a 3-year-old car like the one that you're thinking about buying? What's it worth now? Compare that to the MSRP that it was back then. You can get all that information on the internet. You want to see how quickly a car depreciates? That's a good way to find out. Because cars and trucks and SUVs, they're lousy investments. It's insulting to even call them investments, unless it's like a Porsche or a Ferrari, some really exotic car that sometimes they go up in value. But before you clear out a bunch of money out of your 401k or, take it out of a CD and you put her down on a Cadillac or a Lincoln or a Genesis or a Mercedes or a BMW or, for goodness sake, a Maserati, you better think twice. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, so what should you buy? I mean, I'm telling you not to buy these luxury cars. What should you buy? Buy something common. I mean, you can get the top of the line like a platinum package or the limited. I always love the limited. But just don't buy a Maserati. Come on. Buy the top of the line on a mainstream, popular vehicle line. Well, that's boring. Well, maybe it is boring. But you don't have to finance it for 84 months or 120 months either. And you can take the difference from what you would have paid for that luxury vehicle if you had the cash, and you could buy a CD or invest it, in some stock or something, and actually get some kind of return on an asset that has an opportunity to appreciate. Because I can tell you one thing, this young man, well, not so young, but this guy that owns this Maserati, he's wishing he didn't. He's wishing he had never made that decision to be unique. The main reason he said he bought that is because his wife said she really liked the front end of it. And now he's $30,000 upside down. And he can't trade unless he comes up with a bunch of money. So depreciation is a cost. You're not just looking at what the car cost up front. You're not looking at, just the fuel economy or what the insurance is. You have to think about the end game. How am I going to get out of this? And how long is my ownership period? These are all very important considerations, don't you think? Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. I hope you don't feel chastised. Give me a call if you do, 423-552-2020, or send me an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com. I'll get you through this one way or the other. We'll see you next time.